So, g'day, Novocastrians, and welcome to another episode of the Jetstream. This isn't Furns. Furns is actually away and on family duties for the week, and we thought it'd be a real shame to lose this whole streak that we've got going as a podcast, which, coincidentally coincides with the Jets' honour winning streak. So, just in case there's some kind of karma or hoodoo about it, we thought we'd better try and record another one. This is Matt. I apologise in advance about any sound issues or recording issues that might come about. I'm trying to handle this all on my end, which normally it's all Ferns. We'll do our absolute best to try and keep this concise, professional, and everything that it's not on other weeks. But I am joined on the line by one of our other, long-time contributors, Andy.
Matt, great to be here. Very excited for you to be hosting this time and, be able to set up. Unfortunately, Furns isn't going to be doing this season where he's done every podcast because we've jumped in and got this one. But I've had a couple of weeks off now, so good to be back and good to be talking about a win still.
Mate, talking about a couple of weeks off, it's almost like you haven't been on since we've started winning. Like, is there, are there any links that we can draw to that?
Well, mate, let's hope not. I don't think so because I've actually been, due to getting a whole bunch of time back in my life all of a sudden, I've been able to actually attend more games in the last couple of weeks than I think I have ever been to. And all of those games I've been sitting with fellow, fringe podcast Jetstream contributors in Pete and Dave Keating as well. So shout out to those fellas. And also had an appearance at the last home game from Joel Goodsir from Inspirations Pain as well. So it was getting some of the older crew back together, but we're able to watch that game against Brisbane. And then this week to watch this game, I actually strolled down the street from my address here in Merriweather that I've moved into after some changes, and our listeners can read into the lines of that and make their own decisions, but basically was able to relocate to about 700 metres from the Modus Brewery, who are obviously great supporters of the Jets. So was able to jump down there and see the game and be a part of the official away watch party that they had. Was joined by probably about 25 other people that seemed to, that's their thing that they do every time there's an away game. I'm not sure if they're going to do anything for the upcoming game against Perth because I believe their restrictions have them closing at about 11 o'clock, and I think the game will finish long after that because it's a 9:40 kickoff here on the East Coast. But yeah, missed the first little bit of the game, I will admit, because they were having some technical issues with the sound at the game, at the watch party, but was able to catch it up from about 30 minutes in by the time they got everything sorted and stopped trying to do the whole turn it off, turn it back on again, IT help desk kind of vibe. So keen to chat about what happened from about 30 minutes onwards, unless you want to jog my memory on anything else that, I'll be honest with our listeners, I did not see.
Well, before we even get into the game, mate, the general vibe around the Jets is pretty positive this year. It's the most positive it's been in 5, 6, 7 years. Looking at some of the stats that came out, I saw a post on Facebook. Like the Sydney Auckland game had 12 or 13,000 people there. Us away to Adelaide had like 9,500 there. So and then the next highest was maybe 6. Like for the Jets or for Adelaide Jets in Adelaide to draw such a big crowd when Adelaide aren't doing, particularly well, they might have been 5th or something, before the game was played. Do you think we're starting to live up to this moniker, the whole box office Jets?
I think we definitely are. Now, we had a conversation with the group that I was at the Brisbane game. So I think from memory, I guess the 12,000 crowd, I was about 40 offered or something like that. And the reason I knew it was a pretty good crowd was I'd bought a general admission ticket because I don't have a membership myself, because up until now I wouldn't have been able to get to the games. So I know you should still support your club, but I didn't sort of see the value in getting a membership if I couldn't attend the games. And I know there's memberships if you can't, and whatever else. We'll get into that later on. But I got a general admission ticket, and then sort of the guys I was sitting with, well, they said, look, we usually have a full row where one or two people may not make it. So there's always a spot there. But then it was kind of getting to the point where you could see that the area around us wasn't as open and free as it was a couple of weeks ago. So there was definitely a few more people there. I heard somewhere in the lead up to the Adelaide game that the away supporters bay was sold out. And then I saw on the telecast how big the away supporters bay was. And I thought, well done that we had probably 20, 30 people there. But you got to give it to those people that you watch that telecast every time. And it appears to be the same faces in that away bay, no matter what game it is. So clearly some very passionate and committed squadron members that are going to each and every one of these games. But it is disappointing that we don't have a home game now until I think it's the 22nd of February against Macarthur. But hopefully we can go away to Perth on the weekend and get something there, and that'll keep that momentum going where people will want to come along. And, we're getting between 15 and 20,000 to that Macarthur game.
Well, it's not disappointing given our away form,
Yeah.
which is still slightly better than our home form has been over the course of the season. Like we're a much tougher proposition, I think, for teams facing us at home when they're expected to control field position and possession and all the rest of it. It maybe opens up a few extra opportunities for the style of football we play. But something else that it escapes you now. It was on the tip of my tongue while you were talking, and I didn't want to butt in. Just on the away crowds, I've noticed that a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, the Jets have actually reached out to different supporters. I noticed for that home game, they were looking to contact all the Teletubbies that were in the crowd. Wanted to give them some kind of special offer, and the supporters that actually made the trip over to Auckland for the last game, where it was pouring rain and we probably weren't expected to win. They were offering those supporters a special travel package to go to our first ACL2 game next year. So, kudos to the fans, but also kudos to, I think, the Jets administration for, really getting on board and realizing that it's success on the field that brings the fans in, but actually keeping those loyal fans loyal is going to go a long way as well. And it's probably rewarding that loyalty. Like, if only me and you had kept our memberships going over the last couple of years, then maybe we'd be one of them.
Yeah, and obviously with, the loyalty side of things and membership and whatever else, there was, I think it was in the Laurie McKinnon sort of era that I had a chat with him, and he said, look, there's essentially a base of about 10 to 12,000 members that they need to get to confirm ongoing club viability. Like if they can get that sort of solidifies things and they can move forward from there from a, commercial standpoint. And I think if we can be getting membership numbers up to around that, and then, all of a sudden the discussion around, is McDonald Jones a suitable venue? Well, where else are you going to go if you've got 15, 16,000 every week?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I'm pretty sure that the main reason that they required such a high membership base, comparative to the average crowd, was purely because of the stadium costs. So if they were to move to a more boutique sort of stadium, or that's like a revamp number 2 or Maitland or Lyle Peacock, I'll throw that in just because it helped me. And made these tickets harder to come by, whether or not memberships would be more tightly held after. So it's a bit of a catch-22. Like I still remember growing up that, people used to register their kids for memberships at the MCG when they were born so that they could get them by the time they were 20. If there was a sort of similar thing going because the Jets only played at a 15,000, capacity stadium, all of a sudden they'd be, pretty hot tickets you would expect. So, yeah, you know, I understand the restrictions, I guess, that come with the league as far as needing to be a full grandstand, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe because some of this sort of sponsorship money through the TV deal, et cetera, has certainly decreased over the last couple of years. That it's it's something that they need to look at is allowing teams to go and play on 10,000 or 15,000 capacity stadiums and actually making fans that want to go week in, week out, more reliant on memberships rather than just, being the bandwagoners when, like you are, that walk in
Yeah,
when the going's good.
absolutely. Well, yeah, bandwagoners that walk in when, as I said, you get a whole bunch more free time that you weren't expecting. um, but the other thing is too, and getting off topic a little bit, but with the stadium side of things, I would be very interested, and I know there's commercial in confidence, so you're probably never going to find out, but I'd be interested to see how the deal is structured there because I went to, was it the Wellington game where they did from the bar on the Southern Hill was 50% off drinks until
Kickoff.
kickoff or something like that. And I was in the line and there was about 3 or 4 people in front of me and someone from Gemma or whatever it is that are the caterers for the stadium come up and basically said, nah, this is like kickoff's the end of it. We're not going to honour the people in the line at the 50% off. And I'd been in line for a solid 10 minutes. And they just said, no, that's the end of the promotion. So clearly it'd be interesting to see whether whether the Jets get anything out of food and beverage or if it's the usual deals with a lot of those kind of facilities where off the ticket price, the venues taking X% and then they get all the, food and drink revenue and that's where they make their money and stuff like that. And look, they're probably even taking a clip from merchandise sold and all that sort of thing, which usually is a lot of, I know used to work in the sort of live music event space myself, and that's where things like the fan activation precinct stuff selling merch at the front, the venue doesn't take a cut of that sort of stuff usually because it's outside of the premises. But once they're selling stuff inside, they do take a percentage. So it would be interesting to see that contract. But yeah, hopefully if we can be guaranteeing sort of certain numbers, then those kind of things, one, work in the club's favour for negotiating future deals with the stadium, because as much as we have our local government representatives puffing their chest out saying they want to build boutique stadiums and whatever else, we've kind of seen how that goes even with Newcastle Council and number 2.
And Western United.
Yeah, well, and that as well. But, keeping it local with Newcastle Council and number 2, there was quite a upheaval to the women's team for quite a while there. And I think even some of the main reason they had to take a lot of the Australia Cup games to Maitland was because they couldn't guarantee the surface there. Now, I must say, I walk past there on my way to work every day now, and the field there does look like absolute fake turf because it's, in pristine condition. But yeah, interesting that can be done. So yeah, I don't see any councils actually spending the money on boutique stadiums. I don't think it's something that the New South Wales government or even the federal government are actually that tempted to do. We'll see what an election year brings. But yeah, I think at the moment it's going to be, we've got McDonald Jones, so we need to just focus on being able to fill it. And it's also a bit of a catch-22 from a broadcast standpoint, because you watch a game at McDonald Jones and you go, oh, there's not that big of a crowd, but 70-80% of the crowd is on the side that the cameras are on.
Well, it always
So
happens. Always happens, I guess, for day games when you're sitting. You've got the opportunity to either be in the shade and undercover, or looking directly into the sun. The sun. Shout out to Wes and his family, who are nailed on Jet supporters, who always sit right on halfway, about 2 rows back. Um,
yep.
they've been there for 10 years, rain, hail, or shine. But there aren't too many of them. And just
Yeah,
very quick,
I think Dr. Emma and Linda Drummond and all her crew, they're on that side, I think,
yeah,
normally.
they're a little
Um,
bit they're a little bit further back though. So like, I
yeah.
mean, the whiter skin has to take advantage of the shade when it's prevalent anyway. Just before we get into the specifics of this Adelaide game, Andy, something else that I saw that came up in the socials today was our old AP, Apostolos Stamatolopoulos. He's just signed on loan from Motherwell for the rest of the season to Sydney. What are your thoughts on that?
I did see that prior to jumping on to the pod here tonight, and I thought interesting decision to do. Not that I think we were in the market for him in any way. I don't think that would have been even looked at, nor do I feel that we need him at the moment. But yeah, interesting to go to Sydney. Look, I imagine that's probably somewhat motivated by game time and wanting to get into the World Cup squad and whatever else. But yeah, good on him if he can get it. It wasn't, Western Sydney. So I guess the way of washing
He's
players
broken.
through
He's
Western
broken the
Sydney.
stigma.
Yeah. So, but again, good on him if he can get it. I hope he can do something for them, because the one thing is Sydney's not really the, juggernaut that they used to be, I guess.
Yeah, he's played 2024. I'm just looking at his wiki now. Since 2024, he's played 31 games, 11 goals for Motherwell. It doesn't break it up here as far as how many he's actually played this season. So you'd have to expect that if he's going out on loan, that he's probably out of favour. Um, yeah, well, I agree with you. At least it's not Western Sydney. Sort of surprising that it's not going back to Adelaide though. However, they do have that young 19-year-old who caused us all kinds of problems, and he scored a hat trick a couple of weeks ago against
Yeah.
uh, against Raw. As soon as Goodwin came off and he came on, it was certainly causing us issues. So Brody Burkett, I think the guy's name is, without
Yeah.
looking it up. Looking it up now just to confirm. Yeah, Brody Burkett. Yeah, he seems like
Yeah.
he's another good find, and Stammer maybe just doesn't fit the A League uh, mold for a lot of the non-premier clubs, I guess you'd say at the moment. Like, Sydney have always had
Yeah.
had that extra cash, so I think a lot of the teams now are finding it more beneficial to potentially just go and invest in youth where they can get that transfer fee rather than trying to bring someone back that's, how old is he?
He's by no means old,
Oh,
but
he's 20, 26, 27. So he's
yeah.
probably peak of his career, but to get him back for a 6 month window, like a lot of teams probably can't afford the wages, even if
Yeah.
it's only a percentage of them that he's getting paid at
Mm.
Motherwell, for that short
Yeah.
term short
And
term success.
the thing is, on a loan deal, obviously, Motherwall are wanting to get as much of his wages off their books for that time. And he's then got to, live in Sydney, which even in a studio apartment by yourself isn't going to be cheap to do. So, yeah, and being within sort of QE of training grounds and, you know, sort of the eastern suburbs, you're, yeah, going to be paying a premium for that. So, yeah, I'd say probably command a fairly decent wage. And then you've also got to be able to fit him into, I believe we still have a salary cap. So,
Yeah, we certainly do.
yeah, so you got to fit him into the cap too. And it's not like he's, I think they, from memory, got rid of a lot of the concessions around like, homegrown talent and all that sort of stuff now. So, um, yeah, it's not like they're going to be able to squeeze him in under some special thing. So hopefully they just look at it as as I said, he wants to get into the World Cup squad. That gives him the opportunity if he can play, you know, every
I think
game and score a
I
couple
think
of goals.
I think it'd be hard pressed to try and you know push Toure out of that starting number 9 role, especially after his debut like the other week for Portsmouth. But
Yeah.
mate, we as much as we were trying to say, or I was trying to say, we need to get this done quickly and you know not deviate. We've now spent 20 minutes not talking about the game, the last game that actually occurred, which was Adelaide versus Newcastle in Adelaide last week. Um,
Yeah,
I've
well,
I've I've
let's
I've
run it off.
I've tried to be professional and pull up the FOTMUB stats like Furns would. So yeah, Adelaide versus Newcastle. Obviously, Newcastle run out winners 3-2. The majority of the stats were once again all in Newcastle's favour. Funnily enough, the big one that stood out for me was that Adelaide actually made more passes and had a higher passing accuracy the Newcastle, 433 passes versus 322 for Newcastle, 85% passing accuracy for Adelaide, only 81% for Newcastle. The rest of them, XG, total shots on target, big chances, etc., all went to Newcastle. Fouls committed went to Adelaide. Yeah, like a very brief summation before we get into any of the talking points. My thoughts were that it was a pretty hard fought match. Like it was probably our toughest game since that for the second Auckland game away, where we went down to 10. But they really made us fight for it.
No, it was a very balanced game. Was the what I was saying to the people I was sitting with at Notice. It was that first sort of 38 minutes where I was like, oh, this is a bit weird. Normally we've scored by now. And we weren't even really creating that many chances from memory. And I do admit, as I said in the intro, missed sections from TV errors and whatever. But yeah, it wasn't looking like, well, we'd obviously made it to 38 sort of minutes. And unlike previous games in Adelaide where we would have been losing 3 or 4-0 already, it was definitely a positive. But yeah, the game probably gave us our hardest test, and we'll obviously go through the play by play. But some of the goals that they scored were from just fairly lackluster turnovers, but then also they had 1 or 2 on target that one hit the post and the other hit the crossbar, and things went their way. It could have been a bit different as well.
Yeah, so I guess just getting into the game, that first sort of 10 or 15 minutes were a bit of an arm wrestle. I did notice, Lockie Rose from like a technical standpoint, didn't quite seem on the pace as far as his usual self goes. Like a few balls sort of being played through where his first touch sort of maybe let him down a little bit, or the return ball that he tried to play, when it went astray. But we were certainly pressing him, but I think the first real big talking point of the game came about 15 minutes in, when Adelaide had a shout for a penalty. Did you see it at all?
I did catch that bit. So from memory, looking at it, it was, I want to say Max Burgess did the tackle, and the ball was going straight, and then all of a sudden the ball was going to the right. So clearly he got contact on the ball. The one thing I don't like about VAR is the whole sell of, we're going to overturn it, but we're going to call the referee over to watch it on an iPad on the side of the field to explain to him why we're overturning it. Like, you have comms, you, instead of saying, mate, we want you to come over the sideline and watch it while we talk you through it, just say, we've reviewed it, and because of that, we've made the decision that he's gone down easily. He got the ball. Live, it would have looked like a penalty, but when you review it, it's not. Overturn it. Like, the person in the VAR is a fully accredited referee that any other the week would be in the middle of the field. So I just don't get. I know it's comparison to the bunker in NRL where they actually, you watch them making the decision live and they talk it through and whatever. The um, FIFA or whatever have gone and said they don't want to go to that kind of model, but I just think they're overselling it to, you know,
Adds to
make
the
it
drama.
seem like they do it. Yeah, well, I think they're trying to add to the drama, but it's not drama that's needed in a game that is, you know, based on fatigue and flow and all that sort of stuff.
100%. I agree. Like my first impression was no pen. Um,
Yeah.
then I thought he clearly got the ball. Then I looked at one of the replays and thought, oh, maybe the trailing arm from Burgess, just touching his shoulder could come into account. But no, my first thought was no pen. And it's funny, just on your point, that they don't always walk over to the sideline just to say, yes or no. Like it just seems to be the odd occurrence. Maybe when it goes past a certain amount of time and they haven't made their decision, that all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we're going to overturn this walkover just to build up a bit of excitement, and then we'll let it go.
Yeah,
But
well, I think there was one where they actually, I can't remember what game it was from, but I think it was the last game Jared Gillette or Gillett or whatever his name is, he did. They actually showed it on Fox Sports, like the whole decision. Like they had a camera and whatever on him for the whole game, and he was
yep.
mic'd up and whatever. And he come over and they said to him on that one, they were like, "Oh, we're going to check it." And he was like, "Do you want me to come?" He actually said, "Do you want me to come over and sell it?" Like, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Come on, like, you know, you don't need to, be coming over to sell it. We know what's going on."
You don't want to turn it into the Super Bowl where it goes for 4 hours and there's an hour of play.
Yeah,
That's my interpretation of, I guess, what you're saying anyway.
yeah,
Probably 5 minutes later, mate, we had a decent enough opportunity on goal. Lucky, a good bit of interplay between Bayliss, Adams, and then the centering path to Lockie Rose, who picked up the ball on about the penalty spot first time and sort of tried to place it, and whether it was nerves or just being slightly behind the play, but just seemed to hit it sort of straight at the keeper. It's probably his second good opportunity. I think he put one across the face of goal sort of earlier in the match as well. But it certainly showed that we were in the struggle.
yeah. No, I think with Lockie Rose too, it's not even a fact of he's a confidence player. I just think some games it clicks for him, and then other games it doesn't. And you usually see around that 70, 80-minute mark, they do the sub, they bring him off and they put Ben Gibson on. And when Gibson comes on, it can go one of two ways, where either he creates a lot of chances or you sit there wondering why you took Lockie Rose off and put him on. So that's, one of the interesting things, but he's definitely gives more when he is there. He chases a lot of balls down and is probably one of the, be interesting to compare him to some of the other, number nines in the league on meters and stuff like that.
It's funny. This next comment may seem funny, but I don't actually think that Lockie Rose should just be purely judged, even though he is a number nine. Based on his goal scored, what is he, equal top as far as the Golden Boot goes. But I think it's the defensive effort that he puts out a lot of the time, and the the leadership, I guess, that he sort of shows up front. As for, here we go. Taylor's actually equal top now as well. He's jumped up to 7 goals, so it's a 4-way tie for first, with Taylor, Eze, Rose, and Cosgrove, all being on 7. But I even though he is a number 9, which is normally the KPI that's most heavily weighted would be goal scored. I think that Rose obviously offers so much when it comes to the defensive shape and the structure that we tend to play with.
Yeah. No, and it's definitely a crucial part. And I was listening to Daniel McBreen's podcast that he does, where he just basically
with Teo.
swears through the whole thing. Um, and he was saying, like, essentially the club should be basically offering everyone in the current starting 11 a 3 or 4 year contract and just bedding them in. One, because they're young enough that they're only obviously going to get better for most of them. But then also, too, if they do want to pursue opportunities overseas or anything like that, you're going to get a pretty healthy transfer fee because they're still obviously under contract and whatever. Versus, I think we're probably going to be. I don't think we're going to lose Lockie Rose at the end of the season. I just think he'll re-sign, if especially with Asian football and whatever else. But I think if Clayton Taylor and Eli Adams are continuing to do what they're doing, I think they're more players that appear
They're
to
probably the
be
right age
going.
age bracket, aren't they? With the potential that they're showing.
Well, that, and I think also, like, I don't. I've spoken to Clayton a few times, but never actually spoken to Eli. But I think they also seem to have the ego of a club with a bit more prestige overseas or something like that comes, or they, can say, yep, I've played in Europe and that sort of thing. Like, I could see them going for that sort of factor alone.
When you've got a 15-year career maximum doing this,
Yeah,
like unless you're something really special and you're lucky with injuries,
yeah,
and like Clayton and Eli both haven't been, you
yeah,
really can't blame sort of either of them for wanting to go and like double their earning potential. So,
yeah.
like,
Well,
but
and the thing is, they go overseas somewhere, and even if they're not, like, even if they're training with the reserves and never actually make the first team, they're probably on more money for, training than they are for playing a full season with bonuses in the A League.
100%. Um, Next, real quick talking point, just gloss over it. How big a loss do you think Craig Goodwin was? When he went off after 21 minutes. Obviously, current Socceroo. He's a veteran in that A League team. He was the captain that walked out onto the pitch, and yeah, after 21 minutes, he did himself a cropper, went down like in the penalty box, and was subbed basically straight away. Do you think that had a big impact on the result of the game?
I think it would have impacted the flow a bit. A lot goes through Craig Goodwin for that Adelaide team, but also too just, yeah, haven't heard exactly what the final diagnosis was, but obviously a challenge for him in respect to, whether that is the end of his World Cup. And I think that would have been, like, he's one of those people that's been to the last few, so he probably would have been in the squad in some capacity, just purely even off of loyalty, but also does pretty well as well.
Experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, shame for him. But as you said with your previous point, you're only sort of one injury away from doing a career. Like, you look at, for us, like, this was going to be Batilado's year, and World Cups could have been on his radar and all this sort of stuff. And then does his knee and he's out for the season.
Well, I guess the silver lining for Adelaide was that they brought on Burkett earlier than what they were probably planning, and he certainly seemed to spark the attack and caused us like all kinds of problems. I thought him and DeCooley in that first half were
Yeah.
excellent. You know,
They,
oh, you,
Adelaide seemed to have this real, like, production line of, you know, Australian sort of, I'm going to take a stab here purely off some things, so forgive me, but like Australian, Sudanese, African, whatever production line where, they have the Torres and whatever of the world. Like, they always seem to have one or two of those players that come through and seem to be doing really well.
and
So
they've probably kept the club afloat. Let's face it, like them and Mariners have probably been the two most successful as far as going and developing new young talent that they've been able to export. for a dollar. Couple of minutes later, we saw Wilmering Wilmering and Dobson sort of combined on the left hand side, and Wilmering put on another one of those trademark just easy balls back into the penalty area. Eli Adams though this time wasn't able to put it away, and when that happened, I wasn't worried, but I was like, oh, are we just has the travel gotten to us? Is that like the slight time zone shift gotten to us? Like like Adams has scored some absolutely cracking goals, but from 8 yards out, he wasn't able to beat the keeper.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, whether it's the trying to always do the spectacular now or whatever else, but the thing is, in his development, he's still not gonna, it's not like he's a number 7, but he's not a Cristiano Ronaldo CR7 sort of anywhere on the pitch. You envision it all going in and going perfectly for him. So yeah, I think it's good to miss a couple of things like that in your development so that you continue to
Well,
be hungry to make them.
certainly helps us if the scouts were out looking at him. Apparently they were for our last home game. So
Yeah,
if he can still keep banging a few in, like I know he almost scored an absolute cracker the week before when it hit the crossbar from that free kick that I certainly wasn't expecting him to take. But to sort of miss something like that might up our chances for at least keeping him for the ACL spot. And for almost the rest of the half, mate, the ball seemed to be going the other way. Like Jovanovic had a good opportunity. De Cooley put the ball like right across the face of the goal. We were certainly not on the back foot, but it was even punches, thrown. And given our sort of history, I guess at Adelaide, like in Adelaide, you like what be worried or sort of see the writing on the wall that this was going to be a really tough match for us. It was in my opinion anyway, it was like some really good marshalling of the defence from Nutter and Shaughnessy. I think that really sort of calmed the team down and kept us in it.
yeah, and once again, with this game, Wilmering was on fire. That led to essentially the first goal from Clayton Taylor, and whatever was just Wilmering bombing on and being able to get it and keep it in and stuff like that. So yeah, our backline now, I think it was mentioned possibly in the last pod that you did with Furns that, not having Grozos is one of the best things that's happened this season.
Yeah, and like that's I have been like harsh on Grozos in previous years, but I thought he was just starting to really get into a run of form. But yeah, it's funny you sort of mentioned it was like right off the back of Adelaide actually putting the ball in the back of the net with Brodie Burke coming on, and I thought first impression was that he beat the offside trap. The linesman put the flag up, and then it sort of showed on the replays that it was probably offside by 30 centimeters, if that. I don't know, clear and obvious. Like I'd be spewing if the shoe was on the other foot. But it took us to injury time, like you said, to actually sort of create a chance that we were able to capitalize. It was ball out from Delinov to Natter, played down the left to Wilmering, who played a short pass into Taylor, and then I don't think anyone can claim that this was a shot.
No, it was absolutely a cross that he was trying to get to Lockie Rose, and Rose didn't get a head on it, but it just managed to sneak in the right way.
And how good was the dummy by Rose, though? He had two defenders and the keeper all going towards him, and then just that little bit of tail on the ball. Even watching the replay right now, and I'm watching the replay of the squadron, giving it to the Adelaide fans afterwards. After they thought they'd scored, literally 2 minutes earlier. But Taylor, just no celebrations. Like, what was that? Like, how did that go in? The little chip with his little chip off the right, little bit of curl on it. Definitely trying to hit Lockie Rose on the head. Rose couldn't get to it, but it turned out to be the best miss that he made during the game.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely. So, I I think that, and it was good for I do feel for Clayton Taylor because I feel like he was either injured or not really given the opportunity. And now that he's back in and getting that consistent game time, you know that, like, you know what subs are coming when and all that sort of stuff in our team essentially now. Like, Millsy's been pretty much doing the same subs at the similar time every week. But with Clayton, it's a go out and do. He was used by, I think it was Stanton, maybe the early days of Milligan, where it was like he was brought on to do a job for the last like 10, 20 minutes. And I don't think he is that kind of, he comes on, makes his impact in the start of the game, and then he, you know, goes off and it's job done. And if he can get us 3 or 4 nil up by the time he goes off, happiest of days. And I think that's the thing with, you know, Mills is working out what these players can do and using them effectively.
and that's it. There's a difference between being an impact player and having an impact on the match. And
Yeah.
players like Adams and Taylor, since they've come back into the squad after missing a lot of the Australia Cup and missing the first few rounds, due to injury, they've really shown that they can both make a real impact, like on the way we play. Like they're the kind of players where they'll be in the brief, I think, for the opposition, like a week out. You have to watch this guy. You have to watch this guy. You got to watch Dobson because he's like come on leaps and bounds in the last 12 months as well, the last, 16 games. Now you add to that, like Lockie Bayliss, who has come out of nowhere and he's in like career best form. Like this
Yeah.
guy over the last 3 weeks, like you could sort of see it brewing where he was getting a lot more on the ball, and yeah, he was, misplacing a few passes and whatnot, but he was trying to be positive. And over the last 3 weeks, Lucky Bayliss, I think, has been right up there with Taylor and with Adams, and as far as one of our best on pitch.
Well, and the thing is too, like you look at the squad, the starting 11, there is probably, I was going to say there's probably 9 players that you can sort of sit there and go, any one of those 9 could score a goal at any given time. And then the only person I was going to leave out of that was Shaughnessy. And even then, he's actually scored and been in, close position to score
Well,
as well. So
Nutter won't score, but he'll assist.
I feel like with Natter at the moment, he could even be, right
He'll take
place,
a
right
penalty.
time. Yeah. And, there'll be some reason why. And, it goes back to, I think, the entire team is, as we just said, like, it's not that we've got any impact players. We've got players that can make an impact.
Well,
So, and even when jumping ahead a bit in the game, but even when Cotter come on, like he was very close to scoring, and he's obviously older and can sort of come on at that time to bring everything around and be a bit more technical when people are gassed, but he gets the result.
oh yeah, his record as far as like Newcastle wins and losses when he's been on the pitch has been unbelievable. I think we've only lost 2, since he signed for us, and he certainly didn't come into a good team. But that pretty much wrapped up the first half. We went into the break, leading 1-0.
Yep.
After the second half, the arm wrestle really started again, and the break I think did Adelaide more good than what it possibly did us. What I guess notwithstanding the fact that they did put the ball in the back of the net, through an offside. But they came out and really, really, tried to turn the screws. It wasn't, I think, until we were able to sort of get that second goal, like which, it was like by all means, it was a pretty well worked. It only took us sort of 6 or 7 minutes, I think, from the break to to score the second. But it wasn't your typical dominating, performance that we've sort of come to expect as far as, in Newcastle, maintaining possession and keeping the ball. It was more just the sort of quick transitional play and a really, really intelligent ball by Bayliss, just outside the penalty area to sort of find Taylor, on that left wing. And his first touch took a little bit of a bobble, but he certainly didn't have a bobble when he came to striking it.
No, and it was one of those opportunities where you sit there and you go, the defender's going to be in two minds here, because slightest nudge and he's going down, and that's, going to be a pretty clear cut pen and probably a red card and all that sort of stuff. But he was able to keep the composure and finish it after, as you said, that bit of a bobble to actually get it under control. But then, went through and was able to sink it. And that's where, you really started to think, like, we're on here for a good day.
Mate, the more he plays, the more he just reminds me of Riley McGree, like Clayton Taylor, just as far as the pace, the technical ability.
Create something out of nothing.
Yeah, just, he has got that knack, and that's why I think that we will lose him. Like, I'm with you, we'll lose him sooner rather than later. But if that means that his career continues on the same trajectory, then so be it. I'd rather lose him overseas than to Central Coast or to Western Sydney.
Well, and also too, like, as you said earlier, and great point, that the league is, let's not call it a development league, because that gets, people upset, but it's a league that is salary capped. You can only do so much. You're going to play at either end of your career, right? You're either going to come in when you're young and get the exposure, or you're going to come and basically be able to play out your days and then probably end up in an administration role and maybe do some property development on the side and call yourself Boogaard. But that's, that's where the league is, and that's where it's going to be for probably as long as you and I are topside, like, let's be honest. So if you're Clayton Taylor and you can get the opportunity, but then also too, like, there are going to be players coming through, Bertoncello, who plays that similar position and often comes on for Clayton Taylor. He's not going to be, he's probably a season or two off getting those kind of, look-ins. So, if we lose Clayton Taylor, yes, it would be great if they locked him in and got him to sign a contract extension. But he also, from what we hear, and we can only go off reports, was quite vocal about wanting to try and force a move in the off-season or in the January window. And that didn't eventuate. He's now gone out and said, well, I'll buy in and I'll put the effort in and hopefully get the more recent highlight reel to be able to go. And if he ends up, turning it on for the rest of the season and gets a golden boot and whatever else, you can't blame the guy for, one, wanting to go and try it at a higher level, but also to, make a bit of money and whatever. Because as we said, like, he's had a few injuries. He could have a few more, and it only takes one, and he's, kind of at that point where he's not a Hoffy or a Boogaard or whatever that have got some age and tenure behind them where they can go off and, start a business or whatever. Like, he's probably going to be at a crossroads going, what do I do if he had a serious injury?
Yeah, 100%. And sorry, getting back on the game, because I'm just looking at the time, Andy.
Yes.
50. We're 50 minutes into the game, and we've been talking for 50 minutes. It was only a minute after, Lockie Rose almost picked the pocket of the defence, with his, just because of his intensity and his brilliant pressing efforts, that he got the one-on-one with the keeper, and unfortunately it just wasn't his day. It was saved. But Went back up the other end, and it was a really jet-like passage of play. I think it was De Cooley to Jovanovic who centered the ball to Muniz, and then all of a sudden, Adelaide were back in it. Like you thought heads were going to fall, um, but they played a brilliant passage, and then all of a sudden it was back to 2-1.
Yeah, and that's, it's always going to sort of happen when you switch off a little bit. But luckily we didn't drop. We went and said, all right, we're going to go and get it back again.
Yeah. Excuse me. It, it certainly showed that I think the fight that we've got in the team.
Yeah.
It was to go 2-0 up, down to 2-1. Back to 2-1. 2-1, and then for it only to be what 10 minutes later, I guess. That Adelaide were able to sort of put the ball back in the back of the net again, like, and bring it up to 2-2. And it was like their man, sort of once again, De Cooley, that caused Wilmering some problems this time. I don't think you can necessarily isolate Wilmering for the fault of the goal. But Adelaide, with their extra possession, with the heat factor, with the fact that they were playing, at home, and they had like nearly 10,000 there, and the majority of them, other than that very sort of vocal away contingent, would have been sort of supporting the home team, and because of their position on the table, you would expect that the crowd, that 9,500 that were supporting Adelaide, would have been pretty vocal and sort of pretty switched on from a footballing standpoint. We were just really caught out, weren't we? Like, I mean, we'd press the ball into their half. It was a really, really good through ball from, I can't even remember who, but split the defense between Natter and Wilmering, and it wasn't even quite a one-on-one, but it left too much room with De Cooley sort of running onto the ball, for Natter, for Wilmering to be able to close him down, and it was just a really sort of classy finish. So after 65 minutes, for it to be back to 2-2, I certainly think this game could have gone either way.
Yeah, no, definitely. And from where I was sitting there watching it, I thought the same. I thought, who knows, what's going to happen.
And by that stage, with you at Modus and the number of drinks you've had, you think
Yes.
you were probably thinking what's going to happen on a number of stages, mate.
Mate, it was definitely, the Modus ginger beer is a good one to get around if you want to pay, $14.10 a schooner. But it's definitely one to look out for. But it was carry on and see what we could get. And I did think for a minute there that, it might be typical Jets of old, where we go and we do well and then it falls apart in the last sort of 15, 20 minutes. But luckily that wasn't the case.
Mate, and we're certainly not bagging Modus by any stretch, being one of the main sponsors of the Jets. Regardless of the price of the beer, I would say certainly get in and enjoy a couple of ginger beers, or if you really want to step it up a level, go to the Noisy Boys. I certainly turn into a Noisy Boy after I've had a couple of those, the old double IPAs. Don't drive, drink responsibly. We kept creating chances though. Like, I mean, 65, 66 minutes out, a nice ball to Taylor, where he was able to isolate his defender and beat him, and then across back to the near post once again to Rose, who just wasn't his day. He was probably absolutely knackered from all the defense that he'd done, but to put that just past the near post, you've got to chalk that up, I guess, to as far as another missed opportunity. But it didn't take long for the man of the moment, one of, the last hat-trick scorer. Clayton Taylor to add his name to a list of, I think it's only about 12 or 13 others, notably, featuring one Matt Thompson, who has gotten into real estate and property in his later years, to go and put the ball in the back of the net. It was a very Lucky Rose type goal, like picking the pocket of the last man with a slightly misplaced pass. And it was, it wasn't just who's that he's robbed. It was Vrees, who is a veteran. He's come from overseas. He's played in some fairly decent leagues, but it was pace. It was strength on the ball. Like when he did manage to get shoulder to shoulder to him. Like there was no way that Vrees was getting the front position, and no mistake when it came to putting the ball in the back of the net. From just inside the 18, he slid it straight past the keeper, and there's Clayton Taylor hat-trick, and Jets up 3-2.
Yeah, and at that point, it was definitely a shift where you thought, we've now still got to maintain this so it's not, 2 points lost and they get another goal back and all that sort of stuff. But you can see then, I believe it was not long after that where they did the, usual sort of triple change and were able to just ride it out.
So obviously that's how the game finished, was 3-2. We did make a whole raft of changes sort of afterwards. Taylor came off for Bertoncello. We had the, case in point, as you mentioned earlier, Gibson coming on for Rose. Adams came off for Cicluna. They actually made an interesting one, taking Brody Burkett off for Panache Medana. Looking sort of very quickly back at our subs, we had, Adams, Dobson, Rose, and Taylor come off. Dobson must have been slightly earlier. We had Bertoncello, Cicluna, Coda, and Gibson come on. Any thoughts on those subs, mate, or anything that you thought could have been done differently? How comfortable were you with the management decision, to make those changes when they did?
Yeah, so I think it's a fairly, the changes now are almost expected. And yeah, so I think they were worthwhile. I think Clayton probably could have, if you left him on there, scored a fourth, but you've got to keep, one of the big things at the moment is that they're obviously giving consistent minutes to the entire squad in bringing, Bertoncello, for example, he either starts if there's a reason for him to start, or he comes on for the last 15, 20 minutes. And during that time, he's had some pretty good runs.
So interesting that Max Cooper, who was one of our standout performers, during the first sort of dozen or so games, until he got that card, he's been resigned to taking up his place on that bench. You didn't think it was interesting that Millsy maybe didn't bring on another defensive option to try and see the game out? We, that probably the most defensive player out of those that were substituted was probably Cicluna, who's probably more of a attacking midfielder. I think we certainly would have seen in previous years, changes made to try and protect that lead. Didn't happen over the weekend.
Yeah, I think Millsy still very much goes with a, attacking philosophy of, if they score, we'll score another. So, yeah, I don't think he was or will ever be the park the bus and just hope for the, that we see it out for the win kind of person. He wants to go for the throat and, keep them out. I agree with what you said, though. Obviously, Max Cooper got that red card in Auckland, I think it was, and then it was after that he was, resigned to the bench. But it's also about, like, it's hard as a defender to come on and make an impact. Your sort of defensive impact is more throughout the balance of the game, where it's if we haven't heard too much of you, then you've probably done a good job. Um, so yeah, I can see where Millsy going with the bringing on a whole bunch of attacking players, especially when you've got young fit people like Cello that, as I've said before, just clearly not skip leg day. Um, that can just come and run at a gas defence, then that's the way to do it.
And I think probably the big change since the first Auckland game is that our attackers now aren't just attackers; they are defenders as well, and they probably understand that role a little bit more as far as how they have to get up and back and actually add to that defensive shape, even when we turn the ball over. Um, Certainly didn't help the nerves for the next 20 minutes, though. I think that there were probably twice that Adelaide managed to hit the post. There was another couple of really good crosses that they had that just unfortunately for the Adelaide fans, weren't able to find a head. Good dummies, Rose style. But we were by no means comfortable in that last 20. So as much as we didn't park the bus, I could certainly see the pressure mounting and the weight of possession sort of going towards Adelaide, which is probably part of the reason why there was 100 odd passes difference in the completions. But Andy, another victory, six in a trot on the trot club record, that's been extended from 5. Who was your man of the match?
I think you've got to give it to Clayton Taylor.
Mate, I think that's the obvious one. Hey, he was very clinical and he did what he had to do very well. But I'm going to put Max Burgess right up there as well because you sort of touched on it a couple of minutes ago, but the defensive efforts sometimes aren't quite rewarded. And for a guy that's made his name as being like a number 10, for him to sort of come back into that real number 6 role, like I know he's had sort of Bayless kind of playing with him, but Bayless is, if anything, has probably been playing slightly ahead. Some of the defensive efforts that Burgess had in that game, and I think the organisational aspect of the game, I think we owe a lot to that sort of central figure. So I'm gonna say Taylor just for the hat trick, but Maxi Burgess for me was right up there as well.
Yeah, no, I've been looking at Max Burgess over the last couple of weeks, and I really want him to start getting a couple more goals. I think has he gotten one this season, or is he yet to score?
Oh, hang on, I can try and look it up, but
I was going to say wrong podcast person to throw random stats at.
But I'll look it up, but I think with his repositioning, this year into that deeper role, which is something that he hasn't really done, up until this point in his career, and he's 31 or whatever. It's sort of shown how versatile he is, but also sort of I think how important that he is, to the team as a whole. Because since sort of he started playing that, that deeper role, we've seemed a lot more competent, defensively and a lot more organised anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he's kind of, even at 31, 32, he's obviously bringing in that for the rest of the squad. That's the maturity and I think he's probably got quite a lot to prove that he is, capable of getting strong results. And
it's only taken me 5 minutes, but 0 goals so far this year. He scored a couple of me.
Yeah, so I'd like to see him get a goal at least for the year, and I'm sure it'll come. I'm actually surprised. I would have thought he'd be up there for a penalty taker, but guess not. But yeah, hopefully we see him get something by the end of the season.
Mate, moving on to next week, we take on Perth, the double away trip, and interestingly, the team's chosen, I guess, to stay away for this week and fly straight from Adelaide to Perth. Potentially to assist with that recovery and all the rest of it. And once again, big ups to the Jets administration and the owners as far as making those funds available, so and not having to do the multiple, you know, long flights in a short time. We play Friday. We play on Friday against Perth at 9:45 our time. Mate, any changes that you would expect from the last starting lineup?
No, I don't think so. I think if they've travelled well, you keep the same. I am feeling more confident that we'll actually get something from this Perth game, but also too, like we've seen, Perth is obviously like they've done nothing this season that we haven't done, but they've
They beat us.
obviously, yeah, well, they've beat us. So there's, but we beat ourselves quite regularly when different things happen. But yeah, if like normally, I think it's only been the last season or two where we've, normally a Perth away would be a write-off, and we go, look, if we get there and back and that's all safe, then we're happy days. But yeah, the last two seasons, it's been, we go to Perth thinking we might actually get something out of it. And I think this week we'll be pleasantly surprised. Worst case scenario, walk away with a draw, and we haven't had a draw this year.
Well, it's funny you say that. Like, I mean, you look at the Christmas tree next to the ladder, and no one comes close to the Jets. Last 5 wins in a row. I think the next closest is 2 wins. But Perth, sitting in ninth at the moment, it probably belies their position a little bit. Their last 2 games have been a 2-all draw against Macarthur and a 2-1 win versus Auckland. So, they've certainly shown that they can mix it when they need to, regardless of who they're playing. As far as my tips goes, I'm once again going to have to back Perth because, like, I'm on a roll. So yeah, for me, it'll be a Perth win. Nick, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'll still put money on Newcastle.
Yeah. No, I think Newcastle will come out of this one with a 2-1 victory.
Excellent, excellent. So, we'll very, very quickly cover off just the rest of the round. Friday night we've got Wanderers at home versus Phoenix in the early game.
I think we'll get a 1-1 draw in that one.
1-1 draw. Okay. I think that the honeymoon period is over for GVE Mark 7. I'm going to go Phoenix win in this. Obviously, we've got Perth Newcastle's late game on Friday night. Victory versus Raw. Victory at home. Saturday at 5 o'clock.
I think Victory will score 4 goals and win 4-1. Valkanis will end up getting, well, I think he's already got to do it from the stands. He's not allowed to actually be on the field because he got red carded. And I reckon they will end up with at least one person sent off for fighting someone.
Okay. Vidic, probably. Vidic and Naboo. That'd be a cracker. Actually, no, is it Naboo's now at City? So yeah, that'd be even better if it still happened.
Yeah.
Saturday afternoon or Sunday evening, we've got Sydney and Adelaide. Sydney at home. Sydney, as much as early season promises they showed, and they've still got a game in hand. But even with that game in hand, they can't overtake us. Now 5 points behind. That was the shadow that was overhanging the Jets for the last couple of weeks, as far as like our true position on the table. But now we are 2 points ahead of Auckland, sitting on 30 points with Auckland on 28. Sydney on 25, but they do have that game in hand, so the possibility that they can jump back up and at least equal Auckland. How do you see that one going? Sydney, Adelaide?
I think Adelaide might come away with a 2-1 victory.
Yeah, I think Sydney have kind of lost their way a little bit since, with the injury to Lolly, who's been like a real linchpin in their team for the last couple of seasons. Adelaide away from home, I think, are maybe a little bit of a different proposition. That's a real tough. I'm going to pick a draw. Now, it's a bit of an abbreviated round this week. The only other one that will sort of fit into this round of tipping will be the delayed match from I think it was just after Christmas, which was the Sydney versus Auckland match, which has actually been played on Tuesday, next Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Sydney at home to Auckland FC. Second versus third, as it currently stands on the table. How do you see that one going?
I think it'll be a 2-2 draw.
That'd be perfect for us anyway. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think we
No,
can get that.
I think on that too, just quickly, that we need to, if we're going to be, really looking towards, finals and hopefully even hosting a preliminary final and maybe even getting the whole, first to qualify, hosting the grand final sort of side of things. We need to look to this part of the season to try and put a bit of a gap there for us, and be able to, you know, tie the Premier's played up in sort of the
Let's go for the treble.
later rounds. Yeah, well, and there's realistically no reason we can't do that. So, um, and it'd be great for, you know, Maverick, and it would probably mean losing Millsy as a coach, which would suck, if we, won all that. But again, maybe you could hold on to the idea that he would want to, develop a bit further and play some Asian league and whatever else before going off somewhere. But yeah, I think we just over these next few weeks need to, in the run into sort of the first week of March, be very much embedded into the position we're in with a bit of room there for the occasional wobble.
Mate, on that Millsy front, if we were unfortunate enough to lose him, there's a couple of good, local coaches coming up through the NPL at the moment. Cough, Bodes, Cough. So look, I mean the depth's there. So like we've spoken previously about Damien Zane and all the rest of it. I'm
Van,
sure that
Van Egmond.
if if the team continues to play as we are and we keep bringing talent through, then there'll be options. We're not going to have to go and pay overs to get a washed up has been in. If the football on the pitch and the crowds that keep showing up, going to provide a worthy stage for people that come here. So, um, mate, I think that pretty much wraps up the pod that we've got. Is there any other news that you can think of that we haven't covered already?
Mate, I did just see quickly a post from the club saying that Eli Adams was given the A-League Player of the Month for what I assume was January, considering we're only on the 10th of February. So well done to him, for getting that accolade and showing for a good season, because obviously January, December period is a quite packed period with games fairly consistently. So yeah, hope that translates into something meaningful for him.
But unfortunately, you don't win a championship in January, as they say. So let's hope more that the form that we're showing over the since the start of the calendar year, undefeated, only winning, longest winning streak for a calendar year in the A League history, that we can sort of continue this, and when and if that eventual loss does come along, that it's not at a crucial point in the season like finals, and we can continue to see crowds grow, the growth of the players as far as experience and the output of the players, and just the entertainment factor. Like if we can continue to keep scoring the goals at the rate that we are, I really think we will by the end of the season, well and truly deserve that box office jet tag. Like we'll overtake Barcelona. With the football that we're playing at the moment, we're certainly scoring more goals than they are. They were maybe a little bit more clinical, but you know, my heart is certainly saying that they're a lot more fun to watch. So, mate, good pod. Even without Furns, we've managed to go for an hour and 15 minutes. I think we've covered a lot of things. But thank you very much for making yourself available. Sorry to all the regular listeners that you've probably heard from me a little bit more than what you would normally. You can register your complaints on newcastlefootballforums.net. We are apparently a media empire. There's Instagram and Facebook and all that shit. I don't know. I don't remember the links, so you'll have to look them up. But Google Grant Furner and send your complaints directly to him. Apart from that, on that note, come on the Jets.
Yes, and if you do have complaints, email them to complaints@grantfurner.org.au.
He will gladly respond to each one individually.
Yeah, and he will action them within 10 business days.
Oh, you'll get a response within 5 minutes, he said. He takes this job very, very seriously. He wants to maintain the quality of the podcast.
Yeah, well, let's hope that domain name is available and I can go and purchase it now and set that up for him. So thank you to the fans for, tuning in, and glad that, before we started recording, we were like, oh, can we even talk about this for the amount of time that we would need to? And about half an hour ago, you were probably screaming at your audio device going, would you guys shut up? So on that note, vamos a jerkos.
Come on the Jets. And if there's any other suggestions as far as interviews, we are trying to line up with one with Nigel Bugard in the next couple of weeks, just following up from Tane. Send it through. Attach your complaint to Grant Furner at complaints@grantfurner.org.
Yeah.
Come on the Jets.
If your complaint is about Grant Furner, then you just same email. Just send it to there and we'll make sure it gets passed on.